Today, we continue our discussion on the Four Noble Truths. This is the 6th session. Previously, we haven't spoken in detail about the noble truth of the path, so now we will delve into it. The path signifies the method of spiritual cultivation to realize enlightenment. In understanding the Four Noble Truths, we know that the Buddha often spoke of the effect before the cause. First, he described the effect of suffering, the truth of suffering. Then he explained the cause of suffering, the truth of the origin of suffering, which stems from selfishness, ignorance, and craving. Next, he spoke of the effect of Nirvana, which is the cessation of suffering. Only then did he elaborate on the path, the way leading to Nirvana. Today, our focus is this path. So, what is the path? The path is the method of practice, the way of cultivation designed to achieve 3 primary objectives. To eradicate suffering. Implicitly, to eradicate the root causes of suffering, ignorance, selfishness, and craving, to attain the absolute and unshakable happiness of Nirvana. Thus, the path leads to these interconnected objectives. We might list them as 3, but in reality, they are facets of a single goal. We can think of them as, first, eliminating suffering. Second, eliminating the very roots of suffering. And third, realizing the profound, secure, and joyful happiness of Nirvana. Later commentators on Buddhist teachings often listed 37 aids to enlightenment when discussing the path. These include the Noble Eightfold Path, the 7 factors of enlightenment, the 5 spiritual faculties, the 5 powers, the 4 foundations of mindfulness, the 4 right efforts, and the 4 bases of spiritual power. However, during the Buddha's time, the Buddha and the early Sangha, the monastic community, primarily emphasized the Noble Eightfold Path. So, when they discussed the path, they were mainly referring to the Noble Eightfold Path, with the other aids being supplementary rather than the central framework. Here, we will follow that emphasis. When we speak of the path, our main focus will be the Noble Eightfold Path. The other important sets of practices, like the 7 factors of enlightenment or the 5 spiritual faculties, can be explored in detail in other discussions. Today, we will concentrate on the Noble Eightfold Path. The Buddha explained the Noble Eightfold Path very simply. Its components are right view, the correct perspective or understanding that guides our spiritual cultivation. Right thought or right intention, ensuring our thoughts and intentions are wholesome and aligned with the path. Right speech, speaking truthfully, kindly, and beneficially, as speech is a powerful tool in our interactions. Right action, performing actions that are ethical and create positive merit. Avoiding actions that cause harm. Right livelihood, engaging in an occupation that is honorable and does not harm oneself or others. Right effort, the subtle and persistent endeavor to cultivate wholesome states of mind and abandon unwholesome ones. Right mindfulness, developing clear awareness of the present moment, our body, feelings, mind, and mental objects, which is the foundation for deeper meditation. Right concentration, cultivating deep, focused states of meditation that lead to tranquility and insight. That's the list. As a dedicated student of Buddhism, if someone asks, what is the Noble Eightfold Path? You should be able to recite its components smoothly and without hesitation. This level of familiarity is important. Indeed, for a true disciple, these fundamental teachings like the Four Noble Truths and the Noble Eightfold Path should be known by heart. Let's briefly explore a few aspects of the Noble Eightfold Path to appreciate their significance. Consider right view. Even if one possesses a profound understanding of various Buddhist scriptures, whether from the Southern Theravada tradition, the Mahayana developmental scriptures, or even the Vajrayana diamond vehicle teachings, the One Vehicle, or the Supreme Vehicle, no matter how deep this intellectual understanding, it still falls within the scope of right view. And right view is only the first step of the Noble Eightfold Path. It's a foundation, not the pinnacle. We must remember this to avoid arrogance. Many people approach Buddhism, study its teachings, and might think, Theravada is a basic vehicle. Mahayana is more profound. But Mahayana isn't as advanced as Vajrayana, which in turn is surpassed by the One Vehicle or the Supreme Vehicle. They continuously seek what they perceive as higher teachings. However, regardless of how high their understanding seems, it remains within the framework of right view. Understanding this helps reduce our misconceptions and potential for pride. Some people, after learning from scriptures or teachers, might believe they've reached a very advanced level. feeling superior because they follow a supposedly higher vehicle. This kind of comparison and pride is unhelpful. Why? Because all correct understanding, however deep, is an aspect of right view. It's like the famous story of Sun Wukong, the Monkey King from the classic novel Journey to the West. He possessed incredible powers, including 72 transformations, and could somersault thousands of miles in a single leap. He once thought he had flown to the very edge of the universe, but when he stopped to look, he found he was still in the palm of the Buddha. He couldn't escape it. This story illustrates that no matter how far our intellect or understanding seems to take us, it's all encompassed within the Buddha's boundless wisdom. Sun Wukong, initially relying on his cleverness, became arrogant. Sometimes our own intellectual abilities can lead us to a similar kind of pride, even to the point of thinking we understand more than the Buddha. This is a dangerous wrong view. Sun Wukong eventually realized his mistake. Similarly, we might feel we've grasped Theravada, Mahayana, Vajrayana, and all the vehicles. But when we truly reflect, we find our understanding is still an aspect of the Noble Eightfold Path taught by the Buddha. So, whatever you understand, ensure it aligns with right view. And be cautious. If you become too proud of your understanding, you risk straying from right view into wrong views, which can be detrimental. Now, let's consider right action. Suppose one engages in numerous virtuous practices, the practices of a disciple seeking personal liberation, or the extensive practices of a bodhisattva and enlightenment being dedicated to helping all beings, such as the 6 perfections: giving, ethics, patience, effort, meditation, wisdom, or countless other subtle practices described in various sutras, sacred texts. Even if we perform all these, they fall under the umbrella of right action. Remember this. The Buddha used the single term right action to cover all wholesome conduct. So, one shouldn't think, I've been diligently practicing for 30 years, following advanced techniques, cultivating according to myriad profound practices. Even then, such efforts are still part of right action within the Noble Eightfold Path. Never think you are superior because of your practices. Diligent effort is commendable. Compared to a life spent in worldly indulgence, even one day of dedicated spiritual practice is highly respectable. How much more so for someone who perseveres for months, years, or decades in arduous cultivation? They are truly worthy of respect. Yet, even if one practices for 30 years or 30 cosmic ages, cultivating numerous perfections, it is all encompassed by the right action taught by the Buddha. Understanding this helps prevent delusions of grandeur. Sometimes, looking back at our spiritual journey, we might be tempted to think, I've been a Buddhist for so long, studied with many famous teachers across the globe, learned so much. I must be at a very high level. We must gently dismiss such thoughts. Even a lifetime of dedicated practice is still within the scope of the Buddha's teaching on right action. Remembering this fosters humility. Next, consider right concentration. Suppose we attain deep states of meditation, known as jhanas, or profound formless absorptions, or even achieve a mind completely empty of conceptual thought, like the famous Chan Zen master Xiangyan Zhixian. There's an insightful story about Master Xiangyan. He was a brilliant disciple of Master Guishan Lingyu, known for his calm, meditative mind. One day, Master Guishan asked him, setting aside all you've learned from scriptures, say a word about your reality before your parents were born. Master Xiangyan, despite his intelligence and meditative stability, was stumped. He pleaded with his master for an explanation. But Guishan replied, if I told you, it would be my understanding, not yours. What use would that be? Disheartened, Xiangyan burned his scholarly notes. Realizing that intellectual understanding alone couldn't satisfy spiritual hunger, he retreated to live as a hermit. One day, while working, his hoe struck a piece of tile, which flew and hit a bamboo stalk, making a sharp clack. At that sound, Xiangyan experienced a sudden, profound awakening. He understood Master Gishan's intent. He then composed a verse expressing his realization, which began, last year's poverty was not yet true poverty. This year's poverty is poverty indeed. This story points to a very deep state of realization. However, the point here is that even attaining such profound meditative states, any jhana, any deep samadhi, concentration, even up to the advanced spiritual stages of a bodhisattva, still falls within right concentration as taught in the Noble Eightfold Path. it hasn't gone beyond it. Even if we attain various meditative absorptions or the advanced concentrations of bodhisattvas, we are still practicing right concentration. Remember this so we don't misunderstand. Some people, after starting Buddhist practice, achieve peaceful states of mind, or even develop some psychic abilities like knowing past or future events. They might then mistakenly think they are equal to the enlightened beings of the past. This is incorrect. We haven't gone beyond the scope of right view, right action, or right concentration as laid out in the Noble Eightfold Path. Therefore, when we truly understand the Noble Eightfold Path, we begin to see the immense depth of the path itself and the immeasurable wisdom of our Buddha. Now, a common question arises. We often hear that Buddhist practice comprises three main trainings: morality, sila, concentration, samadhi, and wisdom, prajna. So why in the Noble Eightfold Path isn't right wisdom explicitly listed as the ninth factor? We have right view, right thought, and so on, but where is right wisdom? The reason is that wisdom, in this context, is considered the result or fruition of the path. It is the ripened fruit. A person who diligently practices the Noble Eightfold Path, progressing through right concentration, will naturally develop transcendent wisdom upon realizing enlightenment. This wisdom is an outcome, and this outcome is already described within the truth of the cessation of suffering, Nirvana. The truth of cessation explains the state of liberation, which includes perfected wisdom. The noble truth of the path, on the other hand, describes the way, the causes and conditions one cultivates to reach that result. The Noble Eightfold Path leads to wisdom. The Buddha himself praised the Noble Eightfold Path. There's an account of the Buddha in dialogue with a wanderer to whom the Venerable referred as Msebada. This wanderer was a spiritual seeker in ancient India. Such seekers would often roam from teacher to teacher, seeking knowledge or engaging in debates. Ancient India had a deep culture of philosophical inquiry and spiritual seeking. Many would dedicate their lives to this pursuit, living very simply, often as mendicants. This wanderer, Msebada, encountered the Buddha. Initially, it said he was critical of the Buddha's teachings, feeling they denied people happiness. However, after the Buddha explained the Dharma to him, Msebada was convinced and asked to become a disciple. In their conversation, the Buddha uttered a famous four-line verse, which essentially states, "Health is the greatest gain. Nirvana is the highest bliss. The Eightfold Path is the only way to reach the state of peace and deathlessness, Nirvana." This verse is found in the Dhammapada, verse 204. In this verse, the Buddha highlights that while good health is a great blessing in worldly terms, Nirvana is the ultimate, unsurpassed happiness. And he unequivocally states that the Noble Eightfold Path is the unique way leading to that ultimate peace and liberation. Now, let's focus on that crucial word right in the Noble Eightfold Path. This word right can sometimes make us uncomfortable. Why? Let's explore. The original meaning of right, from the character Chan, is straight, upright. Over time, it acquired the more abstract meaning of correct or true. Its opposite is often translated as wrong or deviant, from ta, which originally meant crooked or bent. Today, the term deviant carries a much heavier negative connotation than it might have in the past. In ancient times, saying someone's view was a bit deviant might have just meant it was slightly off-center or incorrect. But today, calling a path a deviant path or cult is a very strong condemnation. It often implies a path or group that uses violence or causes harm, employs manipulative schemes, especially to deceive followers for financial gain, engages in decadent, harmful, or secretive rituals. If these elements are present, the label deviant path might apply. For example, if a so-called spiritual teacher engages in harmful practices or exploits followers, that would be considered a deviant path. So we must be careful with this word deviant. Normally, if someone simply doesn't fully understand a teaching or makes some mistakes in their understanding, they are not deviant. It's more accurate and kind to say they do not yet have sufficient right view. We should use language that is precise and constructive, not accusatory. Imagine a group of Dharma friends who study in different places. When they meet to discuss their understanding, there will inevitably be differences. One might feel their understanding is deeper than others. In such a case, it's better to think, Perhaps my friends don't yet have a complete right view on this point, rather than labeling them deviant. As long as someone sincerely aspires to liberation and tries to cultivate virtue, they are still on the path. Even if their current understanding is incomplete or not fully precise, they should not be called deviant. Carelessly accusing others of being deviant can reflect a malicious quality in our own mind. Often, people simply haven't understood fully they are not intentionally following a harmful path. Consider also, if you see a major religion with millions of followers worldwide, don't automatically assume it is entirely right just because it's popular. If that religion condones violence or harm, it cannot be a truly right path, no matter how influential it is. Conversely, if you see a spiritual group with very few followers, don't assume they are deviant. If they are genuinely striving for liberation and cultivating virtue, they are on a right path, even if small. The distinction between right and deviant is complex and cannot be judged hastily. If we are quick to judge, we ourselves might be in error. The famous Chinese novelist Jin Yong, who wrote many popular martial arts and chivalry, wuxia, stories, often explored this theme of righteous versus deviant in an ironic way. In his novels, such as The Smiling, Proud Wanderer, there are so-called righteous factions, like an alliance of orthodox sword schools, fighting against deviant factions, often labeled demonic cults. However, Jin Yong masterfully shows that the leaders of these righteous sects can be utterly corrupt, full of schemes and ambition, while within the deviant groups one can find individuals of great honor, loyalty, and chivalry who often perform good deeds. The label righteous or deviant doesn't define the inner quality of a person or group. In another of his novels, The Heaven Sword and Dragon Saber, a similar theme appears. Orthodox righteous sects unite against the Ming cult, which they call a deviant cult. Yet, the Ming cult's tenets included strict vegetarianism, constant charitable work, and helping the oppressed. The protagonist, Zhang Wuji, eventually discovers that this so-called deviant cult was not deviant at all but composed of idealistic and chivalrous individuals. Jin Yong's stories suggest that righteous and deviant are not fixed labels, but depend on a person's actual character and actions. Someone in a righteous sect with an evil heart becomes deviant, while someone in a deviant group who corrects their faults can become righteous. This applies to us as well. Buddhist Dharma is a path of profound truth and righteousness. However, if a Buddhist disciple harbors a narrow-minded, malicious, or manipulative heart, that person, despite being nominally within the right Dharma, is effectively on a deviant path internally. Therefore, we must be very careful with these concepts. So, when the Buddha spoke of the Noble Eightfold Path, the word right, meaning genuine, correct, true, is vast, abstract, and not easy to fully grasp or embody. To live with right view and right action consistently, to be a truly good and righteous person, is not a simple or comfortable task. We might think we are right, only to discover later we were unknowingly mistaken. Or we might follow a large group assuming its popularity ensures its correctness, yet it might still harbor flaws. Therefore, to truly follow the Noble Eightfold Path, to embody rightness as the Buddha taught it, is especially challenging in our current era, so far removed from the Buddha's direct presence. During the Buddha's time, his teachings were often concise, yet his disciples understood deeply and practiced correctly, leading to rapid spiritual attainment. The Buddha might simply state right thought, and through the power of his presence and the disciples' receptivity, they would grasp the profound meaning and practice effectively. Today, without the Buddha's physical presence, we often need lengthy explanations to understand even the basics. A term like right thought might leave us wondering, what exactly does it mean to think correctly? We might easily think incorrectly. We need detailed discourses to begin to grasp what right thought entails. And even then, our understanding can be superficial. It's a difficult challenge. So, when we commit to cultivating the Noble Eightfold Path, we are committing to a lifelong effort to be genuine and righteous people. There are fundamental attitudes and practices to cultivate. We must respect the holy ones, enlightened beings, and great spiritual teachers. This is a cornerstone. One cannot claim to be righteous while despising those who embody wisdom and compassion. The highest respect is due to the Buddha. This reverence is the first criterion for a genuinely righteous person within Buddhism. If our respect for the Buddha and the Holy Ones is not deep and sincere, we are not yet truly on the right path. The second criterion is we must cultivate a heart of universal compassion. This means developing genuine love and goodwill towards all sentient beings without exception. This includes those we find difficult to love, those who are unkind, and even those who have harmed us. This is a profound challenge. Many find it hard to extend compassion to those who have directly hurt them. But to be a true disciple of the Buddha, we must strive to embrace all beings with our compassion, overcoming all personal resentments. Only then is our rightness becoming complete. The third criterion is one must cultivate a humble heart. A truly righteous person is not arrogant. Arrogance is a sure path towards deviation. Even if someone has practiced diligently and maintained perfect ethical conduct, if they allow arrogance to arise, they are in danger of straying. Humility means seeing ourselves realistically, not inflated with pride. It means recognizing our own imperfections. When meditating, if the mind becomes calm and clear, one might be tempted to think, I am so skilled, so advanced. At such moments, it's crucial to remember one's ordinary nature, to see oneself as a learner on the path. A truly humble person also has the characteristic of being willing to admit their own faults first. In any conflict or misunderstanding, instead of immediately blaming others, they reflect on their own contribution to the problem. Even if the other person seems entirely at fault, a humble practitioner will still look for their own shortcomings, perhaps a lack of awareness, a misjudgment, or an unskillful reaction. This willingness to see and accept one's own faults is a hallmark of a genuinely righteous and humble heart. Therefore, these three qualities, reverence for the Buddha and Holy Ones, universal compassion, and profound humility, are foundational. Cultivating them diligently is essential. Beyond these, there are countless other meritorious actions and practices. Buddhism is like a multifaceted gem, beautiful from every angle. A true practitioner aims to polish all facets of their being. While cultivating these, we must also avoid certain pitfalls, primarily ambition for spiritual status or power. If one practices with the hidden desire to become a famous teacher, to be revered by many, or to gain psychic powers for recognition, this ambition can lead to unwholesome, deviant practices. For example, a monk, frustrated with the perceived slow progress of genuine Dharma practice, might seek out magical spells or external spiritual forces to gain quick powers and impress others. This is driven by ambition and leads away from the true path. True spiritual progress is not about seeking powers or worldly acclaim. We should also be wary of teachings that promise very fast, easy enlightenment or extraordinary results with minimal effort. Such paths can often contain hidden dangers or deviations. In Buddhism, we should fear being on the wrong path, not fear that the right path might take time. There's a story of two monks. One was told by the Buddha he would attain enlightenment in 3 more cosmic ages and was disheartened. Another was told his path to enlightenment would be as long as the number of leaves on a giant tree, and he rejoiced, saying, I do not fear how long it takes, only that I might be on the wrong path. If the path is correct, I will persevere. This is the attitude to cultivate patience, diligence, and a commitment to correctness over speed. Avoid impatience, as it often stems from underlying ambition. Another pitfall is indulgence in sensual pleasures, which can lead to moral decay and is characteristic of a life straying from the Dharma. Now, a crucial point: how do we navigate differences in understanding among fellow practitioners? On the path of learning and cultivation, we will inevitably encounter people whose understanding of the Dharma differs from our own. If their view is different, does it mean they are wrong and we are right? Or vice versa? If we are practicing in a way that feels correct and beneficial, and then meet a Dharma friend whose understanding or practice is entirely different, how should we react? Should we label them deviant? This is not a simple matter. If we immediately assume that anyone different from us is deviant, then we become righteous by default and vice versa. This leads to conflict. When someone's understanding differs from yours, it does not automatically mean they are wrong. Our first reaction should be one of self-reflection. We should ask ourselves, is it possible that my own understanding is incomplete or partly mistaken? Only a fully enlightened Buddha possesses perfect and complete understanding. All of us unenlightened beings have, at best, partial understanding. So, when faced with a different viewpoint, especially in spiritual matters, it's wise to first question our own position. Consider these possibilities when encountering a different view. If I am correct, then the other person is incorrect. If I am correct, the other person might be even more correct, i.e., they have a deeper or more complete understanding than I do, hence the difference. If I am incorrect, then the other person is correct. If I am incorrect, the other person might be even more incorrect than I am. Given these possibilities, humility and a willingness to learn are essential. Always try to find fault with your own understanding first before criticizing others. This is the mark of a true practitioner. This internal self-questioning, perhaps my path is partly wrong, or largely wrong, is not easy. Our minds tend to cling to established views. A resistant, ego-driven part of us might protest, "No, I'm right. My understanding is based on the ultimate truth, on what my revered teacher taught." When this resistant mind arises, we must calmly acknowledge it but not be swayed. We must persistently cultivate the humble inquiry, could I be mistaken? Could there be more to understand? It's a struggle between the ego's need to be right and the wisdom that seeks truth. We should always support the mind that is open, questioning, and willing to admit its own potential for error. Once we can subdue this internal resistance and genuinely open ourselves to the possibility that our understanding is incomplete, we are ready to learn and grow. We can then return to the three fundamental qualities: reverence for the Buddha, universal compassion, and profound humility. Cultivating these creates a stable foundation from which to explore the truth with an open mind. With such a foundation, we become more tolerant of differing opinions and can learn even from those who see things differently. But what then is right? How do we define it? This is where it gets very complex. Something can be right in one context but wrong in another. For example, in mathematics, 2 plus 2 is equal to 4 is right. But if someone desperately needs $60 for medicine, and you only give them $20 because they once gave you $20, that might be mathematically fair in a narrow sense but wrong in terms of compassion. What is right according to compassion might be wrong according to secular law, e.g., hiding a fugitive out of loyalty. What is right by law, e.g., gender equality in all behaviors, might be considered wrong or inappropriate by certain social customs. What is right by custom, e.g., elaborate, lengthy morning rituals, might be wrong if it leads one to neglect broader moral responsibilities to the living. An action might seem right in a limited scope, e.g., cutting a local forest for urgent housing, but wrong from a larger, global perspective, e.g., due to environmental destruction. Something might be right for short-term benefit, e.g., some strong medicines that suppress symptoms quickly, but wrong for long-term health, e.g., if they weaken overall resistance. So, defining right absolutely is incredibly difficult. Who has the ultimate authority to decide? This can lead to uncertainty and doubt. However, we cannot live in perpetual doubt. We need some reliable standards. Science attempts to determine right and wrong through experimentation and verifiable results. This is a strength. In religion, however, many crucial results or outcomes are often said to occur after death, making them difficult to verify empirically in this lifetime. This can lead to reliance on faith and, unfortunately, to differing interpretations and sectarianism even within the same tradition. Whose interpretation is correct? Which school holds the ultimate truth? For Buddhists, the ultimate touchstone should be the teachings of the Buddha himself, Shakyamuni Buddha, the historical founder of our path. However, even this is not without difficulty, as teachings can be misinterpreted or falsely attributed over time. Furthermore, a spiritual practice or method that yields good results for one person, the teacher, for instance, due to their specific capacity and conditions, might not work for another, the student, and could even be harmful if it's unsuitable for their capacity. For example, certain advanced meditation techniques or specific mantras might be beneficial for some but cause problems for others if practiced without proper guidance or if they are not a good fit for the individual's constitution or level of development. So, given all these complexities, how do we navigate? While absolute certainty in all matters is elusive, there are some fundamental principles that most would agree are universally right or indicative of a true spiritual path. Universal compassion. A spiritual path that genuinely teaches and encourages the expansion of love and compassion towards all beings without limit is inherently closer to the truth. The broader and more inclusive the compassion, the truer the path. Buddhism, with its emphasis on loving kindness and compassion for all sentient beings, exemplifies this principle to a very high degree. Justice and fairness. Any valid ethical or spiritual system must uphold justice and fairness. In society, this means rewarding good and deterring evil. In a spiritual context, this is often understood through the law of karma, the principle of cause and effect, where wholesome actions lead to happiness and unwholesome actions lead to suffering. A path that clearly elucidates and operates in accordance with such universal justice is a right path. The genuine pursuit of lasting happiness and liberation. Any true spiritual path or ethical system should aim to guide beings towards genuine, lasting happiness and freedom from suffering. This isn't just about temporary pleasures but about ultimate well-being and liberation. Nirvana, the goal of Buddhist practice, represents this ultimate, unshakable happiness and freedom. A path that embodies these three principles: boundless compassion, unwavering justice as reflected in karma, and the clear aim of ultimate happiness and liberation, can be considered a right path. The more profoundly and comprehensively a path develops these qualities, the more aligned it is with ultimate truth. We are fortunate that the Buddhist path strongly emphasizes all three. Today, we have only begun to explore the meaning of right in the context of the Noble Eightfold Path. We haven't even started to discuss each of the 8 factors in detail. Please be patient. We are out of time for today. We will continue this discussion in our next session. This exploration will likely continue for some time. Now, let's address some questions. Question. Someone asks about a mantra from the Medicine Buddha practice. It's said that if this mantra is chanted over water and a sick person drinks it, their illness will be eliminated. They humorously wonder if it's the illness that gets eliminated or the person. Answer. To know if something works, we often need to observe or, where appropriate, experiment carefully. In this case, one would need to see what the actual results are. It's difficult to make a definitive statement without more information or observation. Question. If parents pass away, and their children observe a vegetarian diet for 49 days, will this ensure the parents' liberation or a good rebirth? Answer. Observing a vegetarian diet out of compassion is certainly a meritorious act that can be dedicated to your parents, and it is supportive. However, it is usually considered one part of a larger set of practices. Often, this is combined with chanting sutras, making offerings, performing other good deeds in their name, and sincerely dedicating all the merit for their well-being and positive rebirth. Vegetarianism alone might not be sufficient for such a profound outcome, but it is a valuable contribution. Question. If I keep a sutra book, a Buddhist scripture, under my pillow, does it bring bad karma? Answer. The speaker answers with gentle humor, implying that fear itself can be a problem. It's generally more important how we treat the teachings in our hearts and actions rather than just the physical placement of a book. True respect for sutras means studying, understanding, and practicing their teachings. Question. If one cannot maintain a fully vegetarian diet, can one still attain advanced states of concentration like the Shurangama Samadhi? The questioner mentions admiring a certain practitioner who is presumably vegetarian and accomplished. Answer. Regarding the practitioner you admire and your question about diet and the Shurangama Samadhi, a key principle in such advanced spiritual practices, and indeed in all Buddhist practice, is to avoid killing and to cultivate compassion. Minimizing harm is essential. While a vegetarian diet is often encouraged as an expression of this, the fundamental point is the ethical intention and the avoidance of direct harm. Question. Will vegetarians be eating meat in 10 years? Answer. I'm speaking seriously, not joking. It's quite possible. Why? Scientists are currently developing methods to create cultured meat, also known as lab-grown meat. This meat is grown from animal cells without killing any animals. It's made from plant-based nutrients that feed the cells, which then grow into real meat tissue. If one eats this type of meat, it doesn't involve killing, it's produced in a clean environment. And it is said to be very similar in taste and texture to conventional meat. It might take about 10 more years for this to become widely available and affordable. So, perhaps in 10 years, this will be an option. Question. Can monastic robes be washed together with everyday lay clothing? Answer. The main concern is cleanliness. If the robes can be washed properly and kept clean, whether washed separately or with other clean clothes, then it should be fine. The important thing is to maintain the respect and cleanliness appropriate for monastic attire.